Welcome back to another episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. It is a snowy Friday this morning, and Ben, man, just looking out your back behind you in the window behind you, we got a fair amount of snow coming down at the moment, which is exciting to see. It's been a few days since we've seen that, but before we get too far into that, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Excited to be back for another awesome episode, and we are officially in March here in Denver, Colorado, our snowiest month, and here we go, getting a little snow on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, it's been crazy how quick this year is flying by, man. I know it's something that we probably say every year, but just feel like winter went by even quicker this year than last year. And I mean, just very, very easy, mellow winter. So when we do get these little occasional snowstorms, it's kind of a nice just to realize what season we're even in at the moment.
Yeah, with the exception of that Arctic freeze earlier, but that's one thing that I've really just realized over the last couple of years here is that being 41 now, life is happening right now. And all the more reason to be intentional, live with purpose, and make the most out of every day. Time is happening, life is happening, family, kids, everything. And I really believe that I'm called to be the very best that I can be and just live with as much purpose and intention as I can. So excited to be back and share that.
Yeah, it's awesome. You got some exciting stuff coming up this spring with your family, so we can talk through more of that on a later episode. But I think that really makes the seasons and just the year a lot more exciting when you have big events and trips and just things to look forward to. So anxious to hear a little bit more about that when the day comes.
I think it's so important to have, for all of us, have a compelling future. A future that we can look forward to, experiences that we can look forward to. I think so many people, as they get older, a lot of times they give up on their dreams or their goals and they don't understand, who they are, what their values are. And if you can have a compelling future, it's going to give you something to look forward to, work towards, and it's going to give you a more compelling present.
Man, you got some vocabulary today, buddy. I'm liking that. I'm liking it. So, guys, today we're going to do an episode on, I don't know what the buzzword is for this episode, but, just basically mindset, pushing your body both mentally and physically past what you think is possible. And despite the challenges and the pain and the suffering that you're going through at the time, the long-term benefits of really proving to yourself, your capacity in life and getting through those tough moments. So, Ben, really just excited for me personally just to kind of hear a little bit more in depth on this story of yours today. But just for the audience listening and watching on our YouTube channel today, we're going to talk about an event outside of Boulder called Diesel Day, kind of personal kind of timeline of how this event took place. I just wanted to share a couple things with everybody just for some perspective on what exactly Diesel Day is. So there's a military guy named Brian Contosh, and he's the founder of what's known as the Crooked Butterfly Ranch, and they have different events and just things going on up there to get groups together and really, again, promote just personal growth, mindset, just a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today. I just want to kind of read you guys a couple things from their website really quick. So when referring to this event specifically, Diesel Day, it's an opportunity to put into practical application the mindset strategies and techniques that build resilient minds. Mojo that is gleaned from a military career and ultra endurance endeavors that directly translate into success during everyday lives. From battlefield and ballpark to boardroom and breakfast table, skills adapted through physical endeavor achieve significantly greater traction and retention than reading about them or just hearing the next cute one-liner that's been repackaged a different way. Yeah. So Diesel Day, it provides a lot of different things for people. Everybody's going to a Diesel Day for different reasons. We'll learn a little bit more about, Ben, why you chose to do this. But some of these examples on their website were, gaining just controlled adversity to present the challenge, a growth mindset, strategies and tactics, an opportunity to practice and develop, and reinforce these success skills, an increased sense of confidence and self-worth, and just the opportunity to develop psychological flexibility through social connection. So, with that being said, what the heck is Diesel Day, Ben?
That's right. Yeah, that's quite the introduction there. And there's still a little bit of a mystery. What is Diesel Day? What it is it's all of those things and so much more. I've always been someone that has really enjoyed challenging myself from a physical perspective. I've run about 50 half marathons. I've gone out for runs that are, 20 miles plus. I've done a lot of extreme hikes, here in Colorado, climbed 14,000-foot mountains. I'm someone that works out every single day. I always try to really challenge myself physically. I run every single day as well. I work out twice a day. And so what Diesel Day is it is a intense, incredible fitness challenge. It's a 24-hour fitness challenge. And so you start at 10 a.m. on a Saturday and you don't finish until 10 a.m. on Sunday. And that entire 24 hours, there's no bathroom breaks. You're not sitting down to have lunch or have dinner. You're literally working out for 24 straight hours. And how it works is it's broken up into 2-hour segments. And so the Butterfly Ranch is outside of Boulder, Colorado. It's in the mountains. And I think it's on like 30 or 40 acres. It might even be more than that. It's literally on the side of a mountain. And so for the first 2 hours, and again, it's broken up into 2-hour increments. So the components are, you're hiking with a 45-pound weight that you have to carry up and down a mountain for 2 straight hours. You're doing a loop that's about a mile long. So during your first segment, you're carrying this 45-pound weight and you're hiking up the mountain through this loop out in the middle of the wilderness. And the goal is to see how many loops you can do during that 2-hour segment. As soon as that first 2-hour segment is done, you then go into the second two. And so the first 2-hour segment is really supposed to be hiking / cardio. That's the goal of the first 2-hour segment. And then the second component is the kind of the weight training. And during the second 2-hour component, you are either doing sit-ups, pull-ups, burpees, or you're on either the row machine or the bike for 2 straight hours. And so you hike around the mountain with the 45-pound weight for 2 hours. As soon as you're done with that, you might go on the row machine for 2 hours. As soon as you're done with that, you then go back to the hike and you're carrying the 45-pound weight. And then you go back and you do sit-ups and pull-ups for 2 straight hours. And then you go back to the hike with the 45-pound weight. And then you're on the bike, the stationary bike or the treadmill for 2 hours. And it does not stop for 24 straight hours. No breaks, no timeouts, no bathroom breaks. If you have to go to the bathroom, there was a porta potty there, and you just, hurry up and use the bathroom. If you're hungry or if you need something to drink, you literally, grab a water while you're working out, and you just kind of sip on water while you're working out. Same with food. If you're hungry, you grab like a little granola and you just eat on that. You eat that literally while you're working out. So I've never done anything like this in my entire life. Just an incredible physical challenge and very intense. And just an incredible sense of accomplishment too, once we were, done and wrapped up, and just amazing.
So who turned you on to this? What was the group that you were doing this with? Was it a pretty diverse, collection of people? Was it a big group, a small group?
Yeah, that's another good question. A friend of mine named Will, who had served with Brian in the military 10 or 15 years ago, they were buddies, and he knew that he was doing this. And so he's the one that turned me on. I did that with a buddy of mine named Tom, and there were about 20 of us that were up there, competing in the challenge. And what was cool about the challenge is I am a very competitive person. And everyone else flew in from around the country. So there were folks in there from Washington, D.C., Chicago, other parts of the country. Tom and I were the only two locals here in Colorado. And it's, the real competition was with yourself, but there was a scoreboard and we were keeping track of, how many laps each of us did. If we were carrying the 45-pound weight the whole time, how many pull-ups we did, how many sit-ups we did, all of that stuff was tracked. So there was a leaderboard. And then the other component that I took away is that when you go through an incredible challenge like that with other individuals, where you're under extreme intensity, and it's, in this case, a lot of it was just physical intensity, where nonstop 24 straight hours, and it's also very mental too. What happens is when you go through that pain and suffering, you just develop during that period a very strong bond with the people that you're going through this with. And that was kind of what happened during that 24 hours. We really, all of us, the entire group, connected. We were very encouraging of one another and just trying to lift each other up to be, to allow us and give us the ability to really encourage each other and encourage ourselves. And so that was another, one of my really, really big takeaways.
I think about just my personal, just my physical ailments, some of the things that kind of bug me when I'm working out, and just thinking through even being able to accomplish that. Like I worry that I don't know if I would be able to accomplish that. I guess that's my mindset, my limiting beliefs. But are there examples of other people that were in this group of 20 people or so that, did everybody make it? Did everybody complete the 24 hours? Was there a period of time that people started dropping out of this?
Yeah, everyone did make it through the 24 hours, and not all of us were carrying that 45-pound weight. Now, the thing about the 45-pound weight is that it doesn't sound like it's that heavy, but it was literally a 45-pound plate that you would see at a gym, something that you would put on a bar and do bench press with. And what was so challenging about the 45-pound weight is that it was not easy to grab. It wasn't one of those ones that had holes in it where you could grab it very easily. There was no rim on the 45-pound weight. And so it was this literally smooth, flat surface with no grips. And it was extremely difficult. And when you're going up and down a mountain and you're doing loops and you're carrying a 45-pound weight for 2 straight hours, and you're doing that, for literally 12 hours in a day, it was one of the most difficult things that I've ever done. I remember my mileage from the end of the 24-hour period was, it was like 30 miles that I had done with this 45-pound weight. And so definitely one of the most difficult things that I've ever done. And everyone did make it though, and it wasn't easy. I remember kind of finishing that last hour, and the hardest part is always just getting started, just like anything. It's the start and kind of those first 2 segments, and then you kind of get in your groove. And then, and we're literally doing this in the middle of the mountains when it's pitch dark out. There was wildlife out there. I got to see 2 foxes that came right up to me. There was other wildlife, elk and deer. And so from that perspective, I remember looking up in the mountains and I just saw these 2 like glowing eyes looking back at me. And I think it was a deer, not 100% positive, but there was kind of that component too, where it's like, what, there's definitely wildlife out here. We're in bear country, we're in mountain lion country, we're in coyote country. I don't know what those 2 eyes that are glowing are. I'm just going to tell myself it's a deer and we're going to keep going. And the loop was so big that even though there was a group of 20 of us there, we were broken up into 2 different groups. So while one group of us was on the hike, so there were 10 of us, the other group was back at the ranch, doing their fitness component. And the loop was big enough to where you would get really spread out. And so you wouldn't always be even within shouting distance of someone else. So you're literally kind of out there on your own, out in the middle of nowhere in the mountains. at 2, 3, 4 a.m. When it's pitch black.
Man, that's nuts. So there was this anticipation, I imagine too. You mentioned how you guys actually all got there the night before. So I'm assuming you had a massive meal on, Friday night, big spaghetti dinner, or something just to carb up and just have kind of your body prepared, kind of for what was in store.
Yeah, we all met up the night before. So the competition started at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning, and we all met up at the ranch Friday afternoon and evening. And we actually spent the night in a really big tent right on the ranch there. And we had a great dinner the night before, and then we had a fireside chat around the fire pit, just to kind of mentally prepare for what we were about to take on. And again, this is me coming from the perspective of having done a lot of different, really challenging physical activities. But I remember just feeling, incredibly anxious, knowing that at 10 a.m. tomorrow, I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be working out for literally 24 hours straight. I mean, there's really only been a handful of times where I've even been up that long for 24 hours straight. It is just so outside of my normal routine. And then to think that you're going to be working out nonstop for 24 straight hours. I've done gym workouts before that are 2 hours. I've done half marathons. I've done 20-mile runs. Even those, though, are still only, 2 or 3 hours. And so going from like 2 or 3 hours to working out for 24 straight hours, knowing that, you're not going to be taking breaks, that it's going to be nonstop. It was a little overwhelming. And so I just remember going to bed, having some anxiety, being a little bit nervous for the next day. And then I got into my sleeping bag and there was this giant wolf spider, in my sleeping bag. And that didn't help at all. That didn't help either. And I was like, okay, I'm a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous here. And now there's this freaking massive spider in my sleeping bag that I have to, so I didn't sleep great the night before either, just because of all of these spiders up there in the mountains.
I want to know how good you slept the day after this. I mean, I bet you were just absolute exhaustion to the next level.
Yeah, it's funny because on the way home, I rode up there with Tom, and I was I actually I drove, and I was so exhausted driving home because it's about an hour.
Hmm.
You're up 24 straight hours working out, and then I had to drive home an hour. And on my drive home, dude, I was like having to like slap myself in the face because I was gonna pass out. I was so tired. And so actually the drive home was like almost as difficult as the actual challenge because of my level of exhaustion.
So in that breaking out that 24 hours, was there, I'm imagining a few different kind of milestones where you're at the breaking point of, I don't know if now I don't want to say giving up, but just these kind of benchmark moments where, oh my God, I got another 18 hours to go. There's no way I can do this. Like, were there some of those kind of pivotal moments throughout that 24-hour period of time? Were a lot of those earlier on, or were they, staggered throughout?
Yeah, there definitely were. I remember the hardest part for me was carrying that damn 45-pound weight. And it was kind of left to all of us how we were going to manage that. And so you could carry it on top of your head, you could carry it, on your chest, you could carry it on your back. And so, and there were women that were doing this too. I mean, several women. And, there were women carrying the 45-pound weight. But for me, that was just like getting a really good grasp on this thing and being able to carry it around. I tried holding it on my chest, kind of giving it a bear hug. And then there was another time where I put it on my back and I was like, walking up the mountain, kind of like the Hunchback of Notre Dame with this 45-pound weight on me. There were other times where I tried carrying it on my head. And so that for me was so difficult. And I remember just feeling very frustrated, kind of watching everyone else just like carry this. It's like, how in the world are they doing that? A big part of the community was CrossFit. And so I think I've never done CrossFit before. So I think in that CrossFit community, doing some challenges are, they were a little more accustomed to. So I just had to remind myself that I'm not comparing myself to, anyone else. I'm going to do the best that I can be. I've gotten good over the years at just managing my self-talk. How am I addressing myself? How am I talking to myself? How am I encouraging myself? And that's one thing that I try and always do, just keep going. Let's take another step forward. Let's just keep making progress. Let's get one lap done, another. And at one point I had even tied my sweatshirt. I had turned my sweatshirt into a sling and, wrapped this 45-pound weight around me. I mean, I tried everything. And, but yeah, ended up, I don't know the exact number of laps that I did, but it ended up being, around 30 miles over the 12 hours of hiking. I mean, just crazy.
That is insane, man.
Yeah.
And you said you were very excited to do it again, right?
It's funny because, sometimes when you do something really challenging, you're like really excited to do it again. That's how I was with some of my half marathons. And, with some of these half marathon races, you can go in different parts of the world. I'm going to go do a half marathon in Europe or in Hawaii. And it's fun. And you look forward to that challenge. And with this, it's like, I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to do this and I completed it. I had an incredible sense of accomplishment, but at the same time, I was like, you know what? I did it. I'm done. No desire to
Not
ever do
doing
that
that
again.
again. Not doing that
So
again.
we're done here. We're not, on to the next thing. This has been accomplished.
So was there like one moment that you feel like was just like you're at your breaking point, like where you're about to give up? Or I mean, I got to think that some of these other people too. I mean, there has to have been, and also just that mindset of like there probably are some cases where it's some legitimate injury. I just think about like my knee being bad and my lower back and just like carrying that plate and just you know pushing through that pain, but also I got to think that people could potentially injure themselves or just like be questioning to the point of like, should I keep going or do I need to like, stop and address this issue that I'm dealing with?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. This is not something that you want to do if you aren't in, tip-top shape. And I would recommend for anyone that is considering this to really get a physical done beforehand because it is that intense. There was a guy from Ireland there, and I just remember him being on the treadmill, and we're like an hour in, and he just started like vomiting, like violently, and we're only an hour in. I'm like, dude, you got 23 hours to go. And this is how you're it's like are you gonna make it? But he did. He ended up making it. For me, the hardest part was starting at 10 a.m. and 8 hours in, it's only 6 p.m. Saturday afternoon, and I just remember thinking to myself, I've been doing this all day. The sun's not even down yet. I'm not even close to halfway done. And we've been going at this for 8 hours. I still have 16 hours left. And I think once the sun went down, the temperature really dropped. And those first couple of hours, once the sun went down, were very difficult and challenging. Not just because of the physical component, but also just the mental component. Being out there in the middle of the wilderness, all alone. It's cold. It's dark. You're not really. I wouldn't say you're having fun. It's extremely challenging, but it was very, very difficult. So from that component, I would say kind of the 12-hour mark was about the tipping point for me. And then once you get on the other side of that 12-hour mark, at that point I was kind of counting down. So it's like, you know what? It's 10 p.m. Let's just get to midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And then get to midnight. And then it's like, you know what? Let's get to 2 a.m. If we can get to 2 a.m., then at that point, we only have 8 hours left. And then once the sun rose around 6 a.m. Sunday morning, I was like, you know what? We got this. We're good. And then really just enjoying that sunrise, knowing that I was only 4 or 5 hours away. I actually really enjoyed like the last 4 or 5 hours. I've been talking a lot about kind of the hike on the mountain, but the fitness side too, where you were back at the gym, doing, like, have you ever done burpees for 2 straight hours?
No.
Like, imagine doing burpees for 2 straight hours. I mean, that's what we were doing. And so that was just as like mentally and physically painful as the hike. Um, or you're doing pull-ups for 15 minutes, doing sit-ups for 15 minutes, doing pull-ups. I mean, extremely physically exhausting, but mentally exhausting as well. I mean, just very, very mentally challenging.
Were you allowed to listen to your headphones when you were doing some of this stuff? I feel like just being able to distract myself somehow with something else in my head other than silence would be beneficial.
I've never been one to listen to music or headphones while I'm working out. And so for me, I didn't do that. I can't remember if other folks were doing that or not. But yeah, for me, I did not do that. And I was, just, yeah, just very, very intense.
Wow. Definitely something that I have never experienced as far as something for that period of time like that. That is pretty nuts, man. That reminds me of a David Goggins or, just a crazy endurance type um, activity that, very, very few people have ever done. It can even probably relate to that, but pretty
Yeah.
incredible accomplishment, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I've always I've always been one to believe that it really is important to push boundaries and get out of our comfort zone and do things. And, I wanted to do something that I didn't think that I was capable of doing. And that's a belief that I have physically. That's a belief that I have in other areas of my life, business, um, you know, just personal growth. I want to have dreams and visions and do things that seem so outrageous and so big that they actually are scary, that they're intimidating, that they frighten you. And I've always felt, once you have a goal, kind of like this, I mean, I was, frightened the night before because this was so intense. But I can't tell you the level of satisfaction and fulfillment and accomplishment that I got to experience the following day, knowing that I had just overcome and persevered and conquered something that I didn't know that I was capable of doing. And so that right there is just so empowering. Being able to really hold on to that power and build that power. And that's a muscle, that's a skill, learning how to develop that and nurture that in every area of my life. So that's been one thing that I've always tried to do.
I think with this one specifically, also, it was very personal. It wasn't public facing, where it wasn't like you're, running a marathon where there was people cheering you on, your family and friends were on the sidelines watching you and giving you that, sense of, motivation if you needed. It seems like this was a very personal type um, just accomplishment where, it was for you and nobody else. And,
Yeah.
you didn't have that other aspect that other types of activities have, like um,
hmm
just all these other events that are a
Yeah.
lot
And,
more
and to
just
your
kind of
point there,
flashy and on social media and, Tough Mudder, all these things that are more of a social type challenge. This was very personal.
yeah, some of those other events that I've done, like some of these really big marathons, that last 2 miles as you're coming down the home stretch, you'll literally have hundreds or thousands of people lined up just cheering you on the last 2 miles. And when you have that, it helps so much. And this right here, you're absolutely right. It was just our little group. There was no spectators, no one else. You're out on this course alone. I touched on this a minute ago, but one thing that was so peaceful and it was just such an amazing experience for me is that the morning we had about 3 hours left and I was doing my final hike on the mountain. These two wild foxes literally just came up to me and I had put my weight down for a minute and I had tied my sweatshirt, as I mentioned, to make a sling to carry the weight. And these two foxes, they just came up and started being very playful. They grabbed on my sweatshirt, they were tugging on it, they were trying to kind of like drag the weight off. And this went on for about 5 minutes. And so I just stood there and just enjoyed this incredible experience of having these two beautiful wild animals come up and be very playful with me. And they were just kind of like doing circles around me, even tugging on with my pant leg. And I was like, what? I was like, this is so cool. I've never experienced anything like that, and so I just felt for me that was so fun. It was so it just very very peaceful, and it energized me the last for the last couple of hours, and so that was also one of my biggest takeaways is that experience, getting to experience nature and wildlife in that manner.
That's awesome. If only they could just help you carry the weight a little bit.
Share the load, yeah.
Yeah, man. Wow, that sounds like a very, very challenging but rewarding accomplishment. So I'm glad you were able to kind of go into a little bit more detail on that and share that with everybody. So I thought to kind of close this out, I found a couple quotes that were kind of related to this perseverance topic that I wanted to share that I thought were relevant and kind of inspiring. One person I've looked up to, I know people are kind of mixed on this individual, but with Lance Armstrong, he actually lives up in Aspen now, and just gotten to kind of follow him a little bit closer just in more recent years post his cycling career. But I thought this one was pretty interesting. Pain is temporary. It may last a minute or an hour or a day or a year, but eventually it will subside and something else will take its place. However, if I quit, it lasts forever. So I think that was just kind of a cool perspective, especially with an athlete like him that's entire success and just career has been based off of getting to that absolute limit and just persevering and continuing to push and just realizing that that pain is temporary. But that was
That's exactly right. And one of my favorite quotes, kind of along those same lines, is that we're all going to experience pain, every single one of us, but we get to choose what type of pain we're going to experience. And this is a Jim Rohn quote, where he says, you're going to experience one of two kinds of pain: the pain of regret or the pain of discipline.
I like that.
And so the pain of regret, not, when you get to the end of your life, or when you know that you were capable of doing something, but you didn't put in the work and you didn't challenge yourself and you didn't grow yourself, that's the unbearable pain. The pain of discipline, where you're actually going through the training and challenging yourself. Yes, it's going to hurt and it is going to be painful, but that's the pain that you want. And the pain of discipline, it brings fulfillment, accomplishment, and it is so much better than the pain of regret.
Love that. And then my one of my all-time favorite people, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I just want to share one last quote from him that I really enjoyed too. So,
you know what? I have his biography that I just bought, and it's on my desk. It's going to be my next read, and I think it's like 800 pages on the super small print. But I'm the same way, man. I cannot get enough of Arnold. I love Arnold.
Yeah, he's very inspiring. So this quote says, "Strength does not come from winning. Your struggles develop your strengths. When you go through hardships and decide not to surrender, that is strength."
Yeah.
Just kind of very similar to these other ones we just mentioned. But
yeah, and that's, there's a Bible verse in the book of James, and this is one of my favorite Bible verses. It's one that I constantly share, and it just talks about adversity and how do we look at adversity. And this specific verse, it says that we should receive adversity, trials, and tribulations into our life with pure joy, because it's an opportunity for us to grow, to become more mature, to become more complete. And when you look at it that way, it's like the blessing is the problem. The adversity that you're going through, that is the blessing, because it gives you an opportunity to persevere as an individual or as a Christian or as an athlete. And you are, the bigger the problem and the bigger the challenge that you overcame, the better the story.
What was that again?
Someone like Arnold, he's come over, just an incredible story, because he has overcome so much adversity in his life.
Love that. Cool, guys. Well, I think that's good for this episode. Hope everybody got some enjoyment and just some value from Ben's story on pushing himself to the limit. If you guys are interested in doing a diesel day, I believe they have them multiple times a year. And again, this is the way I would recommend finding more information about it. Would be looking up Crooked Butterfly Ranch, and that's in just outside of Boulder. So it's close here if you are a Colorado resident, or if you're not, it'd be a good excuse to come out here for a few days. But Ben, if you have nothing else to say on your end, I think we're good to go on this one.
Yeah, well, thank you for tuning in, and remember to, challenge yourself. Look at adversity through a different perspective and a different lens, and look at problems, challenges, and adversities as blessings.
All right, guys. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Thanks for watching and listening to The Pursuit.
The pursuit of progress.
Have a good one, guys. We'll catch you next week.